Now, the type of walking bass line that you play depends on the genre or the style of music that you're playing. Like, for example, blues and boogie woogie generally have pretty simple walking bass lines that are quite repetitive. So something like... so that was just that pattern up and down, and then same when we move to the F chord, that exact same pattern up and down. Whereas if you're playing jazz, generally there's not really much repetition in jazz. If you're playing a walking bass line for a jazz song, you'd vary it up. You wouldn't repeat yourself over and over again. If the chord changed, you would change your walking bass line pattern. You wouldn't just play the same thing transposed up. And you'd use a lot more sort of passing notes and chromatic notes and accidentals and things like that. So essentially, playing a walking bass line is like improvising with your left hand. You can more or less play whatever you like as long as it somewhat suggests the chords that you're on. So you can even just improvise using the blues scale in your left hand. So that's a perfectly plausible bass line. It suggested all the chords. I was trying to hit sort of the F and the G's as the chords changed. But that's really a perfectly fine bass line for a blues. Now, of course, as you sort of play that up and get better at it, you don't have to play one note per beat. You can sort of mix up the walking bass line. So instead of just playing something like this, you can play something like... So instead of using quarter notes, I'm using 8 notes and sort of with a swung rhythm and just repeating it. Now that's probably not technically a walking bass line, but it's using the same types of ideas. And of course you can sort of play around with the rhythm a bit, so doing something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I was doing there is essentially putting in an 8th note rest at the beginning, then playing an 8th note on the 1 and then just 2, 3, 4, like a regular bass line. So 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can sort of play around with the rhythm like that after a while. And when you really sort of get more developed at it, you don't have to play the root note on beat 1. You can avoid the root note completely if you can sort of imply the chord otherwise. Like, for example, if you play the 3 and the 5 quite a bit, then you probably don't need to play the root to suggest a C chord. Especially if the right hand's doing something like this. That's already playing the C chord, and it's quite clearly a C chord. So the left hand can do something a bit different, like... Right, so I didn't play the C once there. And that's okay, because it's sort of implied by the right hand. And of course, depending on what the right hand's doing or what the sort of soloist is doing, you can move out of the lower registers up into the higher registers, as long as you don't get in the way of the soloing. So see, once you start getting sort of together, they get a bit in the way, you lose sort of that lower driving register, so it doesn't sound as good. So it's generally safer to stay in the basser areas, but of course you don't have to. And when you're first learning to combine hands, just play something really, really simple in the right hand, like chords. Before you sort of go on to start improvising around it. So stuff like that. And of course, the last thing I should say is it's up to you how staccato or legato you make your walking bass line. It could be really staccato-y, or it could be a bit more legato-y. So that's entirely up to you. So anyway, that's more or less all I had to cover about walking bass lines. Hopefully that all sort of made sense and you could sort of follow my general ramblings, and hopefully you got some good ideas about how to create and what types of ideas you can use to create walking bass lines. Otherwise, feel free to ask any questions or leave any comments, and thanks for watching. See you guys.